if you're an entrepreneur and you find yourself lacking the support that you need, like most entrepreneurs do, and hopefully it doesn't end in something ugly like a divorce. Usually, entrepreneurship doesn't bring that unsupport. Usually, the support was not already there, and maybe just you're trying to go out there and better yourself can make people a little jealous. But in this topic today, which I'm so excited about, we're going to be talking about divorce and how it doesn't necessarily have to be the ugly, scary thing you hear about. So I'm really excited to learn about this. So if this is something that you're going through, or it might look like you're going through, you're going to want to listen to this topic. So let me just do a little introduction of the speaker we have today. And I can't wait. I'm so excited to get to talk to her. Her name is Andrea Hips, and she is a certified divorce coach. Now, how great is that? A certified divorce coach, transitioned and recovery coach, licensed social worker, wife, and mother who has personally lived the frustration and enormously challenging struggle of surviving divorce while working, raising kids, and participating in community life. Today, she helps moms navigate every stage of divorce, from early emotional struggles to long-term visioning and rebuilding. And she is also the author of the upcoming book, The Best Worst Time of Your Life. The best worst time of your life. Yeah, we got to talk about that. I love that title, but I digress. The best worst time of your life, 4 practices to get you through the pain of your divorce. Available in spring 2021. Okay, so Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Nice, nice. So, you know, I'm sorry to hear about your divorce, which is, I guess, why you became the certified divorce coach. And it seems kind of weird to like tell me your story, but yeah, let's get a little background about how you became the certified divorce coach.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's like the book title says, it was the best worst time of my life, right? It was uninvited and unwelcome, and really, especially for your listeners out there right now who are in the thick of divorcing as opposed to being divorced, it is destabilizing. It is fraught with all kinds of questions, pains, triggers, and my story was no different from that. And what happened in my situation was I gave it not only time, which everyone says is a great healer, and I agree, but I gave it intention. And that is the thing that I work with my clients most on now, is to give their divorce story some intention.
Yeah, I love that. Like, you hear the cliche, time heals all wounds. And it's like, not necessarily. I think it's what you do with that time that helps it along the path. So I'm so excited to hear you say that, because that is right on the money. I totally agree. So now, what I said earlier was uh, sometimes like entrepreneurship can make the marriage a little rocky. Would you agree with the statement that I said, that it's not necessarily like someone's going after their dream that kind of causes the divorce, but maybe there were like broken communication prior to that?
Yeah, I think it's just like what we're going through now with COVID, right? Did COVID
Yes,
cause the problems, or were the problems already there? Did your new business
exactly.
cause the problems, or were the problems already there? I think
Right.
every new sort of pressure cooker that our couple gets put in, whether that's having a baby, losing a parent, losing some aspect of your health or your mobility, or starting a new business, those things all put pressure on our ability to relate as couples, and they require what a good friend of mine calls an internal divorce in order to get remarried, even inside of your marriage, on the new terms that this new endeavor will
Mhm.
require for you.
Right, right. And so like I only know of like bad divorces. I really don't know anyone that, I mean, well, yeah, I don't really know anyone that I've been involved with. Like, I know they got married and then they went through something and now they're divorced and it's happily ever after. And it seems like divorce gets us reacting and doing things out of spite. So, can you talk about the dangers of reacting to getting a divorce and how might we shift into, I guess, having an okay divorce where we get along? Is
Yes, and that's, my mission is to revolutionize how we go about divorce. If you have to do it better. And I think one of the biggest parts of, well, two of the biggest parts that make that difficult are reactive sequencing. So, right, when we get in a threat like divorce, we get triggered into fight or flight. We feel the threat, we act on the threat. We also start to shut down our ability to think about solutions, and we start to resist a lot. We say no a lot. No, I don't like the way you do that. And no, I don't want to do it that way. And no, I don't like you. And I don't want you to look at me that way. We also are great in our reactive state at finding fault. We find fault not at all in ourselves, but in every single thing done and not done by our former partner. And what that does is leaves us firmly placed in the it's not going to work spot. And most people live the decades that they are raising their children from that spot. It's very uncomfortable, not only as the person living it, but as the friend or companion of that person who's having to witness it, right? So what I do when I work with my clients is we start to try to imagine creative divorcing. And creative divorcing is just the same scenario and the same circumstances, but we start to put a different twist on it. We start to get ourselves in a place where we can access the logical, reasoning side of our brain more quickly and more reliably, the person who can make solutions, who can think on our behalf. And then we also start to figure out the places where we can say yes and. So by saying yes, you're saying, I'm going to work with what is. And when you say and, you're saying, I'm going to add to it. I'm not just going to pretend it doesn't exist or wish that you were a different person. I'm going to say, yes, you're difficult. And I'm going to do this about it. And then finally, we move out of that fault finding, which is super easy to stay in. And I stayed in it too. But we move out of fault finding and into taking responsibility. And when we take responsibility, that means I'm going to work with what's in my life, regardless of who started it, because this is where we're at.
Yeah, taking the high road. And so I'm taking notes, by the way. So my question is this, the people you work with, are they coming to you because they're wise and they know they have children and we got to make this work? Or do they come to you where this is a disaster? The person has prolonged the divorce for 2 years. We still have to, figure out the whole, who gets the kids thing. Like, when do they come to you, or how do you get to your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually work with people all along the divorce continuum. So that includes people who are in the do I or don't I phase, where they're really struggling to determine whether it's time to terminate the marriage or really reinvest in it in new and creative ways. Or if they are in the messy middle and they don't know which way is up, and all of those parenting plans and asset division conversations are becoming heated and unproductive. And then I also work with people, probably half of my clientele is 5 or 10 years out from their divorce, and they're still wrestling with what I like to call divorce debris, which is the stuff that keeps you hooked and keeps you from living the fullness of your life. I think a lot of people feel like after they get divorced that they now are living sort of side B of the record and the failed part of life and the leftovers and the crumbs that fall off the table. And there are ways to reimagine and move out of victim status and get into creator status and start building something you really are happy about. But the thing I want to say most, and that most people don't believe me on, is you can have that life without the participation of your former spouse. You do not need them to step in with you on this project. You can do it on yourself, for yourself, by yourself.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, can we dive into that? So,
of course,
how do you do that? And I'm assuming you mean, so you're still married to this person, they're still who they are. How do you do that in midst of you're still with them?
Well, I'm thinking particularly of divorced families who are really trying to create sort of act 2 of their lives. And what they do is they go through this horrific experience of legally divorcing, right? That's so and so versus so and so. Seeing that on paper is really hard to watch. And when you go through the process, you're dismantling the entire structure of your marriage. And the pain and the hurt is real. You cannot, on the next day, wake up and go, I totally love co parenting with you. Let's do this. I think you have some great ideas and I want to try it your way. People put that kind of pressure on themselves and they work themselves into a corner where all they are is disappointed with their former partner. That's what creates the typical sort of scenarios that I'm sure you have friends dealing with, and I have friends that deal with it too. What we do to change that is we stop putting the pressure on the co-parenting dream. Co-parenting is a great goal, and I want everybody to get there. And I enjoy a great co-parenting relationship. But you know what? I'm 7 years out from the end of my divorce. I parallel parented for years. And that's where I encourage all of my clients to start, is in parallel parenting. And that's where you take your active parenting time and you parent the heck out of it. You do everything that you think is awesome and you love it and you enjoy it. And then when you send them to the other parent's house, you allow them to parent in the best way that they know how. Now, I'm not talking about situations where your child's health and safety are in major danger and risk. You will need to take action in those ways, and that's a totally separate story. But if it's about whether or not they have Cheetos for lunch or oranges, there is not a court in America that's going to take that kid away from that parent when they're eating Cheetos. And so we start to talk about ways when that child comes back from the other parent's house, how to tell that story in a way that we like. Okay, so let me give an example, right? With the Cheetos and the oranges. Your kid comes back and they say, oh my gosh, I had like the greatest time. We totally ate Cheetos. In your mind, you're exploding, right? You're like, God, all I'm doing over here is trying to feed this kid fruits and vegetables, and I'm doing the hard work, and all you're doing is playing, and it's Disneyland dad time, and I'm getting nowhere with you. Why can we not do this together? That's one option of how to respond. The other option of how to respond is to get into the story that your kid wants to live in. This is an example of how I would respond. I love that when you're at dad's, you guys just goof around like that. I love that you guys just have a great time. And I do it too. You know, when you're gone, guess what I had? I had a candy bar. But what I'm excited about now is we're both gonna have an apple. That takes dad out of the story. That puts the kid back in the center of the story, and that makes you feel good about what you're building. You don't want your kid to take on your old news about that person. Make a new story.
I love that. And it's really about the child, and they should never see mom and dad or partner and partner bickering and fighting and making it not work. So I totally get that. But what if all you can do is think and talk negatively about your ex-spouse?
Well, if that's all you can do, I want to assure you, you are entirely normal. that is the heart of a divorcing woman, and you're going to need to do that, and you can't get around that, and you're going to drink through a lot of bottles of wine and go out to dinner with a lot of people and tell them all about it, and strangers in all kinds of locations. It is your story, and you're going to have to work through that. But when you want to get to work and you're tired of that part, you have got to put some serious intention around building something with your former partner. What we think about expands, right? If we only think about what they can't do and what they won't do, that's what we're going to have. I encourage all of my clients to go through the same process that I did. I was challenged early on in my divorce recovery by a guide to do 3 gratitudes every morning for my former partner before I got out of bed. No repeats. Now, you know, it was a lot of quiet mornings in bed trying to grab for that, right? And they were really pathetic gratitudes at the beginning. Oh, I'm glad he doesn't hit me. I'm glad he's not here. Just real base stuff. But
Yeah.
over time, when I really gave myself to that effort, I started to see the parts of him that I didn't appreciate well when we were married. And those became the things that I build my relationship with him on now. Our kids know what mom loves about dad.
That's good.
That's all they need to know. And so it was not something that happens overnight. And I'll tell you right now, it is not something that you can fake it until you make it for the lifetime of raising your kids. You can fake it till you make it those first few years. And I encourage you to. You will have to fake it till you make it. But then your heart needs to catch up with your mouth, because your willpower is going to run out. And that gritty stuff that you actually still feel toward that person and lead with, because that's all you're thinking about, is going to come out sideways, and your kids are going to figure it out. So when you do the hard work of finding gratitudes, you can start telling the story your kids want to live in again, which is that mom loves dad. Even though mom and dad don't live with each other, mom loves dad. And I can tell you the 3 things that she loves about him, because she says it all the time.
Yes, I love that. I've never heard of this before. That just the 3 gratitudes of your partner can even be like a preventive measure if there's a couple that kind of feels like they're heading down that road, and it kind of forces you mentally to appreciate that partner. I mean, I'm just imagining, like, every single day I have to think of 3 things, and like you said, it's harder in the beginning. It's kind of like, but yeah, how can you not help but appreciate that other like, that is so good.
It is a super helpful practice. And I feel like it also allows us to give the very thing that we most want from our former partner, right? Like, I talk to a lot of women who are like, he doesn't even appreciate that I'm taking care of all the doctor's appointments, and that I'm dealing with soccer snacks, and that I'm doing this. Okay, what have you appreciated lately? What have you said thank you about? Just from the basics of, you know what, he pays every month. Or I love it that he's the only person that can make my kids laugh like that. We have to go down to the very basics, because I know we don't like these people. I know that. I'm not telling you to like them. I'm not telling you to get married to them again. I'm not telling you to do anything Herculean. I'm telling you to start with the very, very minuscule basics of what works and see what happens after that.
Okay, so I can imagine that, the only reason they're getting divorced in the first place is, well, I guess there's some couples where it just didn't work out, but for the most part, there's been some pain, there's been some hurt, there's been some unforgiveness. So even though they're practicing the 3 gratitudes, and even though they're practicing everything else that you teach in your coaching program or your book, that we'll talk about a little later, like, are there triggers? Like, I'm sure you're driving down the road and you see a building and it's like, oh yeah, I remember, and that's burned in an emotion, and you remember a memory, or you smell something. I mean, so how does that person deal with triggers that might come up?
Sure. My stance is that triggers fall into one of 5 categories. Once you can get crystal clear on what you most often get triggered by with regard to your former partner, you can start working on the game plan to take back your power and to start reducing the impact that those triggers have on you over time. In some cases, it'll take the trigger away or take the reaction away entirely. In some cases, it just turns it down and gives you some space to be able to start thinking through a different way of responding. So for example, with my clients who have another woman story, right, where there may have been infidelity, that triggers a number of things, right? It triggers your sense of status, like, God, am I not enough of a woman to keep your attention? It triggers your sense of certainty, like, I don't know if I can count on you anymore. Your sense of autonomy and your ability to call the shots, because now what's she want and what are we doing with her around here? It triggers your sense of relatedness, which is, I'm now on the outside and you guys have a new thing that I'm not a part of, and that my kid is now sometimes a part of, and I'm over here by myself. And then we also have the trigger of fairness, which is just, oh my gosh, it is so completely unfair that you not only did this, but you still get to be a parent and have our kid, and I'm going to sit over here alone. So in each of those cases, it's perfectly normal to be triggered, right? I mean, we have to acknowledge there's a tremendous amount of pain and suffering that's a part of divorce. We're not supposed to avoid that. But to walk through it when you're ready is to start to look at, how can I take these triggering thoughts that I'm having when I see him with her and start reassuring myself that I can solve this threat inside my own life. So for example, status, and you're wondering, was I enough of a woman? Well, that's a pretty important question to ask, especially if you're an entrepreneur, right? Not how you think about yourself and how much you can applaud yourself. Don't give your status over to another person who you're no longer in a relationship with. Be able to affirm, yes, I was. I actually still am. I'm a great woman and I was a great wife. And when you're triggered by certainty and I don't really know what I can count on, you start looking at different ways of talking and thinking that are able to secure some of that for yourself. So you're like, well, I don't know if we're going to have Christmas together. Well, be the leader of that conversation. What are we thinking about Christmas? I'm open to this or that. You take some of that back. All triggers do is push away your own power. And what we learn how to do in divorce coaching is to take it back.
You know, while you were saying that, I was thinking of like rules. So in marriage, you know, we have a rule, or, you know, she does this, he does that, or whatever. You know, there's structure. And I could just see how divorce, it's kind of like all's fair in love and war. Like there is no structure. So, I mean, how do you create that structure? Like what do you do?
You're absolutely right. And I think that's the thing that divorcing parents feel after they've left the marriage structure is, well, now I'm in this new spot and I'm being told that I'm supposed to put my kids first, like you, and behave as though I'm a preschooler. And that's sort of the general guidelines, right? And meanwhile, you're nursing a tremendous amount of pain and suffering from the dissolution of your marriage, which previously was, you know, built on a level of commitment to each other, a level of support and passion, and certainly the intimacy that comes from having a bond with someone. You just tear all that apart and then blank space. And so one of the things I work with my clients on is creating a new structure. And that structure starts with commitment. And people don't like to think about that because they're like, well, the marriage ended. Yes, the marriage did end, but the relationship goes on forever. One of you is going to be at the other's funeral because you're parents to a child, right? So how do we commit to re-engaging the relationship in ways that are going to be supportive of what our children need? The other part of that structure, it's a three-part structure. So commitment's the first part. The second part is passion. And the passion is obviously no longer for them in a physical sense, but it's a passion for your own self-growth. It's a passion for owning your part and being fearless about being able to state how you contributed to the situation you were in. And then finally, it's about intimacy. And again, that isn't a physical intimacy. And it's not even really liking your partner, but it is being able to do gratitudes in a way that gives you material to build something workable with them. So when you put all those three together, you start to have a structure where I'm aware that I need to build something. I'm aware that I don't need to build it with you. I'm aware that every part of what I'm doing starts and ends with me. I offer myself, I give myself, and I live from my values, regardless of how you ever respond to me. What that does is gets your fingers out of their life. They need to be allowed to live the life they're going to live anyway. They're going to be the way they're going to be, and you're not going to change that. You're no longer the voice of change in their lives. The more you pull back and pull into yourself, the more they're allowed to stop doing the same to you.
So for anyone who is in that journey or leading to that journey, I'm sure you have specific steps that you help them through. How can people learn more about you and get to know you?
Sure.
Your services.
Yes, right. I have a website. It's AndreaHippsDivorceCoach.com. There's 2 P's in hips. And on there, I just give a lot of sort of information to help you figure out where you are in the process and what kinds of things might help you. I offer a free practical communication guide for communicating with your partner, former partner, even when they're difficult. I love for people to go get that and just get some few tips. I also have a weekly email that I send out just to sort of help people on their way and give them new things to think about. And that is also combined with a weekly blog. So if you hit my website, you'll be able to get all of those things. I also keep up to date an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and a LinkedIn page, all under the name Andrea Hipps Divorce Coach. And so those, again, I try to put out as much free material to just remind you, to pull you back into the place that I know most people want to be. They just didn't know it was an option to be there. And then finally, this upcoming book, which I'm very excited about. Well, I am also very excited, thrilled even, to be hosting a webinar with Judge Lynn Toller. She was the divorce court host of that television show for many, many years, and still is seen on the Marriage Boot Camp TV series, Very intelligent, very warm, very, very knowledgeable about relationships. And so we're going to be talking on January 28th, 6 p.m. Pacific, about what it takes to have a great marriage or a great divorce. And I'll give you a hint, it's the same thing.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes,
I'm also going to post that below too. How fabulous is that?
Yes, she's fantastic. We're really blessed to have her.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're watching, all you have to do is scroll to the bottom of this video, and all of Andrea's links are going to be in the description below. And what you said is definitely possible, because I always thought it was some kind of not a myth, but if people are getting along, maybe the divorce was just, they were friends and it just didn't work out and nothing really horrible happened. But you're saying no, we can really make it work for the child. So I love that.
We can. We settle for a lot less. And I think it's time that we stop doing that. If you have to divorce, you can do it better. And there is a way to do that.
That is so perfect. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience before we go?
Absolutely. The pain of divorce is real. Don't try to rush through it. Don't try to make it go away. I can only tell you, as a survivor, along with, and I have clients, many, many clients who are also survivors, you will make it through. Commit to staying classy, commit to gratitudes, commit to owning your own part, and you're going to get somewhere really beautiful.
Ooh, that was beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Andrea. Once again, go scroll down to the bottom and get the links. And this has been awesome. Thank you again for volunteering to do this. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for the privilege. It was so, so, so wonderful to be with you.
All right. Bye.